Hello and welcome to the podcast, Your Future in Sales and Marketing, with me, Mike Dickson, Director of AXR Recruitment and Search. In equipping you with insights to make great career decisions, we've unpicked the careers of over 65 leaders in this pod. And today we bring you one of FMCG industry superstars, Paul Bull, Sales and Marketing Director of FMCG Analytics. Now, most of you will know Paul from Real World Marketing. As always, we're going to take you through Paul's career before and including Real World, but we're going to spend most of our time on his new venture, FMCG Analytics, and how he's going to change the world of revenue management with a little help from his friends. Welcome, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, Mike. Thank you. Good to be here.
Fantastic. Good to see you. And Paul, as always, we're going to start with an icebreaker, collecting, as I have been doing, the favorite brands of the good and great from Sydney's FMCG world. What's your favorite brand?
I would have chosen Mutty, but Mutty's come up numerous times on your podcast. It's a business that I've had the pleasure of working with and love Trish and the team. I actually love their products as well, and they're a staple in our household. But given you've had Mutty chosen, probably thank you. And I know you've had a few social enterprise brands, but I am a little bit green and left-leaning kind of individually, and that's a brand that we buy a lot, and I love the kind of work that they do. So, yeah, I choose thank you.
Cool. That's why we get on, Paul. Same political stance. Well, it's not a political podcast, guys.
Correct.
But and just socially aware.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. So before we get into your career, what was life like growing up? Where have you come from? You're obviously not from Australia, Paul, but albeit you're like you and I are naturalized Australians now. But tell us about early life.
Early life was pretty simple, Mike. I grew up in a mining town in the north of England, a place called Doncaster between Sheffield and Leeds. Real working class, so mining, steel works, factory work. But for me, life was basically all about being outdoors and being with my mates. You'd get kicked out in the school holidays or weekends at a certain time and you're told to come back by 7 p.m. for dinner, and you'd just be outdoors having fun. So kind of quite different to how kids grow up these days, but pretty simple. There wasn't a lot of money around, so you made your own fun. But looking back, it was a real kind of simple but quite an innocent time and a really good childhood.
When I was in the UK and in particular Scotland for the last month, Paul, I was chatting a lot with my family and my sister, my brother's now in the UK as well, and reminiscing on those times. Similarly, to you, I guess, growing up at a same sort of time of, and we used to find that, I don't think Mum and Dad knew where we were anytime. Yeah. we cycle the next town 20 miles away.
Exactly.
And come back, as long as we're back for dinner.
Yeah.
They had no idea.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, Mike. I think our childhoods were unscripted and you had to kind of make your own fun. Whereas I worry a little bit now that kids' lives are kind of planned and scripted, and it's too routine. And I think there's a bit of balance that's probably good to get to.
I think they call it almost like it's a right to roam. And I've heard people, this is measured apparently by how far kids go from home before parents get worried. And every year it's getting smaller and the radius is coming in. Sad. Anyway, we'll come back to the question. Yeah. So your career started with Kellogg's in the UK. So I'm interested, Paul, why FMCG, why Kellogg's? And you spent 7 years there, so presumably you got a bit out of it.
I think there's a story here, Mike, and I think it's quite an insightful story in terms of FMCG and how FMCG's changed. My mum and dad were working class. They encouraged me to have jobs pre and through university. And one of those jobs that I had was working in a big sports chain in the UK. Worked in the kind of sportswear, footwear department. And we used to see all these reps from Adidas and Nike and Puma turning up. And to me, they had the best jobs in the world. They had the greatest and latest range of trainers. They were all kind of smart and slick, and they were obviously successful. And I thought to myself, wow, that looks like a really good job. I wasn't from a family where you have professionals, so you kind of can get mentors within your family to kind of help educate you and where you could take your career. I mean, where I grew up, most people followed their parents into work. My dad was a miner, and my dad didn't really want that for me. So my mum and dad encouraged me to get an education, to have a choice, but they didn't really know where to guide me in terms of those choices. So I just fell into a job, and I saw these people doing these roles, and I thought, that looks really cool. I'd love to get into that. And I can remember talking to this Nike rep and I said, how do you get your job? How do you get into Nike? And he said, there's two routes. You can either be a very successful former international athlete, or you can be chosen from FMCG. And at the time, I didn't even know what FMCG was. So I was like, can you tell me more? And he's like, oh, it's all these big blue chip companies. It's where the best professionals come from. It's businesses like Mars, Procter & Gamble, Kellogg's, Coca-Cola. And so if you want to get into a business like Nike, go and establish and prove yourself there. And so that's what I did. I looked for opportunities, applied for a number of jobs. I was fortunate to get an opportunity with Kellogg's. And I say fortunate for a number of reasons. Back then, FMCG had big field teams. They had graduate career programs. They knew how to bring you in, onboard you, train you in FMCG, give you opportunities to see different functions within the company and ultimately find out where you fit. And I was also fortunate because I had probably the best leader that I've ever worked for in my career to date, who just knew how to get the best out of me. I was surrounded by great professionals, really high standards. The culture at the time was really one of internal progression and career development. And so they gave me 7 roles over kind of the time that I was there, all right across sales, category, new business, alternate channels, leadership. And I look back on that now as probably the single best experience that I could have had in FMCG. It was just a great onboarding and kind of grounding experience.
Fantastic. And you didn't get to Nike?
I didn't get to Nike because the longer I stayed in FMCG, the more I realized that this was the place to be. Great brands, great companies, good cultures, really good leaderships, lots of opportunities. While I was at Kellogg's, they sponsored me to do an MBA at a really good business school. That kind of opened up my eyes to more kind of executive opportunities in my future and kind of other functions. And I just really love the industry that we're in. And so, yeah, Nike was the kind of reason why I got into FMCG, but something that I never kind of returned to, which is kind of quite interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. So then you moved to Campbell's, and a couple of years in after that, you landed in Australia, and quite quickly into a sales director kind of level role.
Yeah.
Talk me through the move to Australia and how that obviously went well for you.
Yeah.
Because you went into that sales director role quite quickly.
There's a number of parts to that. So I think I have a love for travel that was partly comes from my mum. So my mum always wanted to travel the world. She had an opportunity to be a 10-pound pom, but then got pregnant with me. And so they decided to stay in England. And I think I've always had that urge to go and see the world a little bit from her experience. And I had the fortune to come to Australia in 1999 on holiday and see the Barrier Reef and see the Red Centre and spend time in Sydney. And you just cannot get a better place to live than Australia, as we've both kind of found. So I had an urge to travel and an urge to get to Australia. And how I got here was through a move to Campbells in the UK. So there was a really savvy recruiter in the UK who'd formed a relationship with me at Kellogg's, see me develop and go through a number of roles, and only ever approached me for one opportunity, which was, I think, very interesting. And it's a role as grocery director for Campbell's. And the backstory is Campbell's had more than doubled in size. They bought a series of brands from Unilever, and they were really looking to step change how customers thought about them in the marketplace and going from a mid-level supplier to a top-level supplier. So they were bringing in a bunch of people to the team who were ex-Procter & Gamble's, ex-retailers, ex-Mars, ex-Kellogg. And it just seemed like a really exciting opportunity. I was there for a couple of years, really enjoyed the experience, got a lot of great wins and step change in those relationships with key customers. And that got me onto a global top talent program with the parent company, Campbell Arnott's. And an opportunity became available in Australia, which is a place that I wanted to come. And the situation was Arnott's had bought a snack food business. They paid a lot of money for it, and it was struggling. So it was losing money. They'd lost their leadership team. They were putting together a new leadership team and needed to turn the business around. So I came in as sales director for that snack food business. It was a real baptism of fire. It's a new market. It's not core grocery. It's kind of alternate channels and petrol and convenience. And there was a lot of things that we had to change. So I look back on that and I view it as one of if not probably the best learning experience in my career. And it's where I got to meet my good friend and now business partner, Matt Freebury, as well. So yeah, a really good time.
That's fantastic. And you then started your second career, we'll call it, which is consulting.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, you worked with Advantage Group. You had we had one of last year's guests, I think, episode 54 from memory, was John McLaughlin. Was this part of the plan to get into the consulting world?
It's a good question, Mike. And having listened to many of your podcasts, I think a theme of my career, which is probably advice I'd give to my younger self, is to be a little bit more proactive and planned in where I wanted my career to go and how I wanted my career to develop. I think reflecting, it kind of happened a little bit organically. And so what happened at that time is I decided to leave Arnott's, and I had a period where I kind of thought about what next. So I had opportunities to go back into other corporates, into other sales leadership roles, but I reflected on probably the last 5 years of my career up until that point, and I thought about what is it that's given me the most enjoyment, the most stimulation, where have I been able to be my best? And those moments were strategic project opportunities. So both in Kellogg's, Campbells and Arnott's, we'd had some external consultants in a range of different companies where we'd worked as cross-functional teams trying to really solve complex business problems or develop new growth strategies for the company. And I just found it really, really interesting. I loved problem solving. I loved collaborating and being creative. And that type of work gave you that opportunity probably more than your traditional sales roles. So what I thought is I wanted to give that a go. And I'd had a couple of really deep experiences working with a business called TPG, and just loved the way that they kind of ran their process. And in my last few kind of months or year with Arnott's, I'd brought in John McLaughlin and a chap called Roger Jackson, who had a business called Real World Marketing. And I just loved the way that they worked. So I reached out to those guys. They were a small company at the time, and they were looking to expand. There was an opportunity to go and join that business and be entrepreneurial within it. And they were also looking at the time to establish Advantage Group. And I had really good relationships outside of core grocery. So I led the establishment of the Advantage Group into the convenience channel, into the liquor channel, as well as I learned how to be a consultant in real world marketing. And it was a really good decision. It actually worked out for me, despite the fact that it wasn't kind of that planned. And that led to me being there for kind of close to 15 years, which was fantastic.
Yeah, it's an extensive period. And
yeah,
if you look at your LinkedIn profile, it's almost like overlapping periods between Advantage, real world marketing, and now FMCG Analytics. Can you just explain the relationship between all three?
So if you go back to 2008, Real World Marketing and Advantage Group were small businesses, and they were kind of part of the same group. And a few of the people in that business, John included and myself, kind of double-hatted. So we were doing predominantly category and joint business planning type work as consulting, whilst looking to establish Advantage Group, which was new then versus is incredibly well regarded and established now. So John and I would have kind of two responsibilities in managing those brands. As they grew, we got to a natural point where we decided to demarcate responsibility. John led Advantage, I led Real World Marketing. And since about 2011, the focus within Real World was expanding beyond its heartland into much more kind of broader commercial areas, which included portfolio, marketing, brand, insight, but also training and revenue management. For all of those evolutions, we kept it within the kind of master brand, Real World Marketing. But for revenue management, we also set up a specialist brand called Real World Analytics, which operated quite differently. Rather than us running a consulting process with a team, this is now a data scientist team that did the analysis and did the work and took it to clients. And since I've come back from my travels, I've decided that's where my future lies. And we're actually now rebranding as FMCG Analytics, just so that we have that kind of point of difference and separation.
Great. And we're going to really jump into the FMCG Analytics business. I find it fascinating what you're going to do with that.
Okay.
But before we do, let's just talk about the sabbatical.
Yeah.
So you're well known, you're successful, the businesses are going well. There was definitely a post-COVID, a real strong growth period in FMCG and retail. Then you kind of pressed pause and said, "Look, I'm gonna take 2022, leave the country with the family, and just go explore."
Yeah.
So take us through why and how and get into that a little bit for me.
Yeah. Look, it's fascinating, Mike. I think the genesis of the trip, and I think it probably goes back to my childhood, was this desire to see the world and to travel and to get an education and to use that as an opportunity to have an experience of life, right? So in some ways, do the things that my parents never got the opportunity to do. And the desire to have a family experience was about 10 years in the making. So my wife and I both love travel, maximize all the opportunities that we get to travel within the kind of traditional holiday periods that you would get. But neither of us had had that extended kind of gap year experience. And we wanted to do it together and we wanted to do it as a family. So then you think about when's the best time. And for us, that time came when our two children would be old enough to be semi-independent on the experience, would be old enough to remember the experience and for it to shape them in some ways, hopefully positively. But before they got into high school, before they kind of had social groups that were the center of their world. So that turned into a time frame when our boys were 8 and 10, which was kind of 22. So about 5 to 6 years before the trip, we picked that as the year, which was pre-COVID. And we had a totally different itinerary to the one that we followed. So the itinerary was going to be 6 months from the bottom to the top of South America, learning Spanish as we go, then 3 months hiking in the Himalayas, and if we were brave enough, chartering a yacht and sailing back to Australia. So that was kind of the big dream. Then COVID came. The idea of being stuck in the Amazon or on the top of the Himalayas might have been the best place to be with COVID rampant, but we kind of were a little bit more conservative. So we decided probably not. And then unfortunately, we had a terminal family illness in the UK, someone very close to us. So last year was going to be the last year that they were around. So we changed and we decided that we needed to be back in the UK, but also had an opportunity to experience Europe. And we decided to buy a camper van and travel around as a family, kind of go to and from the UK as a base. And I must say, Mike, I feel incredibly grateful for the opportunity. It is genuinely the best year of my life. A lot of people say, what was it like? We had 3 goals, three ambitions in the trip. One was to create lifelong memories, which I think we've done as a family. One was to come back tighter and closer as a kind of family and as a couple. And we've definitely done that. And the third, personally, was to kind of recharge and re-energize. I mean, FMCG is a brilliant industry, but it is fast. Being a consultant is complex and energy consuming. And I probably needed a bit of a change. And so I had this incredible opportunity to reflect and think about what's next. And I'll be forever grateful for that.
Great. And we'll get into what's next. I think what you did was fantastic, Paul. Amazing journey. I love the goals you set, and the fact you achieved them is brilliant. It just shows that once you're into a career, these things can still happen.
Yeah, exactly.
A bit of thought, planning, commitment, and bravery.
Yeah,
they can absolutely happen.
Yeah,
your first idea for the trip, that's still going to be done though, right?
The current plan is that, so I was 50 last year when we did the trip.
Yeah.
The current plan is when I'm 60. So 10 years from now, the kids will be then into university.
Yeah.
We can go without them.
Yeah.
Hopefully they still want to tag along for a little bit of the trip, but we've just pushed it back a decade.
Great. Love it. I can't wait to hear about that one. So let's get into where you are now, Paul, and what I really want to spend time on in the podcast, which is FMCG Analytics. I guess, first of all, give me the elevator pitch. What is FMCG Analytics?
FMCG Analytics is a specialist revenue management business anchored in software and systems and tools, but also does consulting that really, we believe, sets you up for success by best helping you grow your sales and profits in the short term. And then over time, embedding revenue management capability through people, process, and tools so that you can optimize your business and your customers' business. There's lots of studies and papers from companies like McKinsey, BCG, Nielsen, etc., that talk about the impact revenue management can have. It's still relatively new in our field, and I'm sure as we'll talk about today, Mike, it can be a difficult thing to do. And so having a specialist partner that can help you get there quicker or do it beyond your own capability can make a real difference to your P&L.
A lot of our listeners will be aware of the term. They're probably getting to understand it a little bit more on the periphery.
Yeah.
But not everyone will really understand it. So can you just give us a kind of a quick snapshot of what is revenue management and why is it important?
So if I start with why is it important, in our experience, it is the fastest way to improve your business in the short term. So kind of first 12 months. I say that with both my sales director and my consulting hat on. We are so promotionally reliant as an industry. Price has become a difficult lever to execute well for a bunch of reasons. Now that's changed recently as well in terms of different conditions. And so what that means is we're often not fully optimized in terms of how we can maximize the available demand for our business and the category by best meeting the needs of shoppers, the broadest needs of shoppers, and we end up leaving a lot of value on the table. We don't get our pricing right. We don't get the range architecture right. We certainly don't promote in the ways that are most incremental. And revenue management in FMCG is just about helping you understand how to do that better, consistently, to grow the profit pool for your business as well as your customers. Now, a traditional definition is revenue management is the disciplined use of analytics to optimize the profit and growth available to you through understanding the right offer for consumer shoppers, priced and promoted in the right way, in the right place at the right time. Now, within FMCG, there's some particular nuance. I mean, one of the things that I think is important is we should never lose sight of revenue management is about understanding shoppers and shopper behavior through the use of analysis and technique, but it's about optimizing shoppers' ability to buy products in a category at the maximum price possible because what we do provides value to them. So at the heart of revenue management is the shopper or the customer. I think it's nuanced because we're so promotionally intensive. So the natural start point is promotions. And I also think because we're so concentrated as an industry, we've got to think about mutuality and kind of, the profit pool. And what we need to avoid is this kind of I win, you lose or profit transfer between us and trading partners. And we've got to think about a sustainable pathway to grow the profit pool over time by bringing shoppers into categories and then trading them up through the range of offers that we provide them, how we price and how we promote.
Great. Okay. So who's responsible for it in a business?
This is a question that's probably the most asked question that I get. It will depend a little bit on where the company's at in their evolution, who that company is. Are they a local player? Are they a multinational? What resources and how sophisticated are they? And what are the business conditions that they're in? Are they fast growing? Are they slow growth? Are they turnaround? Those types of things. But typically what you see, the more tier one international companies have got revenue management teams, which are either standalone or report into a broader strategic function, which is typically what we see, or might sit and report into commercial finance or finance more broadly. So big tier one's established, revenue management has its own distinct dedicated resources, standalone or reports in to strategy. For smaller companies, what they would tend to have is dedicated revenue management resource that sits within category or commercial finance teams, but they're probably, 2 to 5 people versus in bigger functions, it can be 10 plus people. And then you've got some businesses who do some of the things that you would do within revenue management, but they do it within existing teams that are not revenue management. So that would typically sit within sales or would sit within commercial finance.
Yeah. And what about the retailer? So you talked earlier around this joint profit pool and growing it together.
Yeah.
Does the retailer see revenue management in the same way? Are they going through the same journey?
That is a fantastic question, Mike. It depends a little bit on the retailer. So some of the leading retailers in this marketplace have commercial finance partners, have equivalents of revenue management teams. They wouldn't call it revenue management. They tend to call it commercial finance partners. They would have category partners and commercial finance analysts who would be helping them understand where the opportunities are to price and promote differently and range differently, and how that would be net beneficial or incremental to them. It's really interesting how retailers can naturally be, I think, a little bit hesitant towards engaging with suppliers around revenue management opportunities. The good companies say they take a broader retailer perspective, but they tend to default to what's beneficial for them, which I think is a little bit natural. But I think it's also interesting that retailers are moving price all the time, and often suppliers don't fully understand that, know why they're doing that, or ultimately understand the impact of doing that. So in answer to your question, retailers are more active in leveraging the revenue management levers than suppliers. They do have resources to help them identify those opportunities. They tend to be a little bit more tactical, but they wouldn't necessarily call it revenue management within their business.
So it feels like it's a journey for both suppliers and retailers. And there's really some variety in where it sits and who's responsible for it, which I guess is where your organization comes in, trying to put some sense and structure around it, Paul.
Yeah.
If we kind of look from our listeners' perspective, and we have people all levels of organizations who are listening, which is wonderful. But does it kind of sit a little bit in everyone's role as well?
Yes. And this is super important, Mike, because if you take a step back and you think, what is revenue management? It influences marketing, sales, category, finance. And it's really important that the exec team understand what it is as well, and can therefore marshal an organization's resources to leverage it over time and get good at it over time. So if you think from a marketing perspective, I mean, most instances, it's marketing who ultimately own the decision around price. And it's anchored either around consumer willingness to pay, or can be around price relativity to competitor brands. But whenever you launch an offer, the pack that it sits in and ultimately how it's priced tends to be input or owned by the marketing function. So that's critical. But as we've talked about a few times, most of your business mix tends to come through promotion. And certainly the biggest variable cost on your P&L is your promotional spend. And that nearly always sits in sales. Sometimes commercial finance might have a big voice in that. And so how you invest the company's resources to ultimately deliver your business goals, I think, is most achieved through how you execute your promotions. So revenue management is critical there, and we can talk a little bit about what kind of good looks like in that space. But then you've got category, and category tend to be the recommender of range to retailers. And what can be interesting is sometimes companies come at that from a where are opportunities for my brand and my portfolio, versus taking a bit of a step back and thinking holistically around what are the opportunities for the category? What's the architecture of the category? Where have we got opportunities for tiering? Where have we got too much range and duplication that we can change? And how can we create space for innovation or pack price architecture that can basically kind of create net value? So I think it does fit across marketing, sales, and finance. And I do think it's important that execs understand the power of revenue management and what good looks like. And why I say that is you can have execs who have been incredibly successful in their career, but because revenue management is somewhat new, have maybe not seen what good looks like or not had that in their own career. So it can be new to them. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah. In practical terms, what has your business done or is doing, Paul, FMCG Analytics,
Yeah.
to I guess, develop tools or in real terms for people within sales, category, commercial finance to be more effective in their role when it comes to revenue management?
There's three parts to what we do, Mike. So the first part that we do, which is what we're best known for, is what we've done for 10 years. So really in-depth pack price promotional studies that are category-wide to help you understand how to optimize range, including innovation, pricing, promotions, and investments so that you can grow your business and you can increase the profit pool for your customers as well. These are in-depth projects. They typically take a couple of months, but the track record that we would have is an average of 10 times ROI for companies within first year, and usually circa 10% profit pool increases for both customers and retailers. And so we've been very busy for most of our history doing those projects. But what we got presented with a number of times was feedback from clients and execs going, what you do is brilliant. It's often beyond the capability that we have as an organization, even for big tier one multinationals. But the challenge that we have is when you go, that capability goes with you. So how can you help us have that capability ongoing? So for the last 3 to 4 years, what we've been doing is investing pretty much all the profit that we make into transitioning our analytic techniques into software. So we have a proprietary FMCG specific solution. We call it Marlin, which is really what's called a TPO or a trade promotion optimization tool. But really what it does is it allows you to have ongoing the analysis and the outputs that we provide in consulting projects so that you can truly understand the pricing promotion dynamics in the category, and you can do what if analysis and scenario modeling to ultimately work out how to grow your business and to grow your customers' business. Now, whilst we've been doing all of our projects, we see 3 buckets of opportunity. We see range opportunities, we see pricing opportunities, we see promotion opportunities. Often promotion opportunities are the biggest because they're so much a part of our business. And what we have seen project after project, category after category, is really big variation in promotional volumes. Same mechanic in same retailer. So the spread is plus or minus 50%. It's massive. And it all comes down to 5 executional conditions. Now, this is assuming normal levels of supply, which we know has not been normal for the last year or two. But if you're in good supply, how visible you are, so how well executed on display, how visible in catalog, how relatively priced you are, so how clashed you are in retailer in that week, how substitutable pricing across the marketplace, and then what forward buy has happened before, so you've pantry loading and preceding kind of purchases. Those 5 conditions make up 90% of the variance that you get in your promotions. So we have this situation where promotions are the biggest part of your business. So in our 60 projects, they average 78% of total volume, which is crazy. 50% swings in your outcomes that come down to 5 conditions. A lot of good companies know this, are grappling with it, and spend a lot of effort and resources collecting that information. But it's not perfectly organized. They have gaps and they don't have context. So they understand for their business, but maybe not for competitors and certainly not for broader store. So what we've been doing for the last 2 years is creating a solution that we've just launched. It's a new product. It's called Shoppervisor. And it's a syndicated product that we believe any promotionally intensive company in consumer goods would benefit from. And it gives you weekly visibility of promotional execution of these 5 things, plus some other data. It gives you great reporting so that you can really understand how well executed or not you are, and over time execute better. Because if you execute better, you benefit and your customers benefit.
Great. So that's Shoppervisor.
Yeah.
And that's a tool that can be used by people who are on the tools effectively. So your national account managers, category managers.
100%.
Yeah.
So principally lives within the sales team, and
Yeah.
the account managers will, kind of live and breathe this week to week and use it in their discussions with retailers, because often retailers don't have visibility of market-wide execution and understanding what's impacted their business. Also helpful for category teams. If you think when you're doing range reviews, the biggest variable in business velocity is what promotions have you run and what support have you had. And if you don't understand that, then you're missing a key part of why something should be ranged or given better ranging or better spacing. And it'll also be very helpful for revenue management, commercial finance teams when it comes to setting the promotional strategy, understanding the conditions that drive outcomes and how to change probably your calendar and your frequency of promotions. Be helpful there as well.
Potentially a game changer, it really is. I think, guys, for listeners, really focus in on this part, because there's a lot that could really change your world here, I think. But thinking about that, so revenue management is important. We're starting to understand it more. It's part of everyone's roles. And I guess regardless of where organizations are on their journey, what can individuals do? So if you're a national account manager listening to the podcast, what can you do to kind of start to understand revenue management yourself and upskill?
Yeah. This is I think a really important question, Mike. When I entered sales, what was important was managing relationships, being able to sell effectively, and be able to negotiate. Now, those things haven't changed. What became important through the time that I've been in FMCG was things like category management and taking that broader category view and being able to do really good joint business planning as retailers look to kind of partner on strategy. But I think what's critical now is your ability to be analytical, to deal with ever-expanding and complex data sets, and to be able to make data-driven decisions and really make sure that what you are recommending and ultimately selling and executing is good for your business and ultimately good for the category. And I think revenue management is at the heart of that. So I would say anybody thinking about a career in FMCG who wants to progress needs to be comfortable analytically, needs to make fact-based commercial decisions, needs to be able to ensure rigor in what they're recommending. And so you need to have roles either in revenue management or similar to revenue management. Now, how can you get that type of experience? You can either be part of a business that revenue management exists or is looking to become established and look to include that as part of your career progression. If it doesn't exist, you can try to influence, create a business case, or get involved in a project so that you can have an experience and create a proof point that might kind of get that on the agenda. If neither of those things exist, then you have opportunities for lateral moves and to step outside. Go find a company where revenue management exists and is important, or an agency who specialize in that. Or I would even say, step out of FMCG into an industry where it really is a core discipline, to be able to then bring back some of that kind of analytic technique and capability that you've learned. I think previously people would worry about leaving FMCG and coming back, and I say don't, especially early on in your career. For me, get as many experiences as you can and go and find places where revenue management is a really good and important discipline and learn, and then be able to bring that back to other organizations that you want to be in. And of course, there's lots of companies that can help you. So there are training programs and there are tons of resources. There's lots of white papers, articles, books on the subject. So you can actually learn while staying in a business where it might not be a core discipline as well.
Great advice. We've seen in our business, Paul, the last year, the demand for revenue management steadily increase. Yeah. So we're recruiting revenue managers from both the sales and marketing side of our organization, which most of the listeners will know. Some might not know we have an accounting and finance practice too, which is actually a pretty significant player in the market. Yeah. And the accounting and finance practice are also recruiting revenue managers. So we're finding this kind of hybrid situation. Yeah. We're not quite in competition with each other, but we actually see a mutual opportunity to develop more of a hybrid practice that says, look, we think revenue is important. We see the power of having both perspectives in our organization, potentially being able to help those going forward to unpick, well, how do I create a career revenue management? So the last 2-3 roles we've had, we've actually worked them jointly and put in place revenue managers. And the shortlist has been full of people from both perspectives. Yeah. But actually, the organization is moving in the same direction. Particularly those are more evolved in their thinking. Some are still dancing around the edges and trying to get their head around it. But we find it fascinating. So to your point, we're in that space, guys. If revenue interests you, then talk to us. Talk to me and my team. If your colleagues in finance you're talking to are interested, then get them to talk to us as well, because we're really keen on it. Now, you made an interesting point there as well, Paul, on resources available. There's definitely a growing momentum in the marketplace. You and I have a real vested interest in this. I've been talking about this for a little while.
Yeah.
We've got a white paper coming up.
Correct.
Which is in the final throes of being written. Do you want to just give the guys a bit of an oversight into what that white paper is going to be?
Yeah, so look, as part of rebranding, so rebranding as FMCG Analytics, we're going to be really looking to be much more active in terms of marketing and materials that we put into the marketplace. A little bit, real world analytics was a really busy business, but focused on solution development and doing work, and never really talked to the marketplace or drove awareness around who it is and what it does. So we have a need to obviously help people understand who we are and how we add value to clients. So we are going to be more active. We've got a really great relationship, Mike, which we value. And I think this is a topic that people are really curious about. So we're going to be putting a lot more content out there. One of the things that we're going to be doing is this white paper. It's a deep dive into what is revenue management in an FMCG context. Why is it important? What does good look like? What are some of those kind of core questions that we've been talking about, but kind of expanded out a little bit more? And also touch on again, how can you develop or include revenue management within your career journey as well? So it'll be a combination of our view on revenue management, your view around kind of career progression and management. But I think another thing that we're keen to do as well is an ongoing forum or a kind of roundtable where people who are revenue management leads want to get together with non-competes and kind of talk about this topic and learn from each other over time as well. Will be something that we'll look to establish.
Great, yeah, a lot coming from AXR and FMCG Analytics, Paul, in what is a topic that's only going to become more and more important for organizations. So now, as a result of this, we do have a lot of listeners. Do you want 1,000 phone calls from national account managers looking for advice? Or what's the best way for them to kind of interact with your business?
Oh, it's a good question, Mike. Look, yes, I want calls, right? I mean, ultimately, we're in the business of helping companies and helping clients. So if you don't call, we don't know that you've got needs. So yeah, please reach out to us. What I would also say is, as we relaunch, as we rebrand, as we get active more on LinkedIn and social media, there'll be some opportunities to follow us and also let us know what content you want. So ultimately, what we want to do is put content out into the marketplace that adds value and resonates, a lot like what you do. We've got lots of ideas as to what that will look like. Some people will kind of give us feedback. So we'd love to know, be in a conversation with us. And then, as I say, we're going to be looking to do some events and forums as well, where we get a little bit more intimate with people, deepen those relationships. So follow us, let us know what you'd like to see from us. Put your hand up if you kind of want to be in a conversation, but love to hear from you.
Great. I also think to your previous point as well that you made around what can someone do? If revenue management perhaps isn't a big part of the agenda in your current organization, you can make a name for yourself by actually waving the flag.
You can.
And talking to your exec, your manager, your sales director about their views on revenue management, where they think it's going.
Yeah.
And if you're equipped with a bit of research, for example, the white paper is coming out, get a copy of that when it's launched, present that to your business. There's going to be a lot of stuff you can do to be proactive in this space as well.
There is, Mike, and just a couple of thoughts. Right? I'm more than happy to go into those types of businesses, those kind of people, and potentially be a catalyst. So if what you want to do is understand what good looks like, if you want to see some proof points, demonstration, if you want to see what roadmaps look like, more than happy to come in, show that to you so you can go and try and influence, or equally talk to you about which companies do this well so you can connect with them. Often kind of peer-to-peer networking, seeing businesses that have been successful by kind of going on the journey and being inspired to do that as well can be powerful. And we know a number of those companies and can happily connect you to those people as well.
Fantastic. Paul, loved the conversation today. Really interesting early stage journey. Talks to your drivers and motivators. And I think what you did in 2022 in terms of taking your family out was brilliant. But you've come back with such focus on what you're going to do with this new business or an evolution of an existing business into FMCG Analytics. And we're passionate about the partnership we want to create with this. We're for our listeners, we think revenue management's going to be a bigger part of your future than you probably realize for a lot of you. So if we can help you upskill in this space, and our whole purpose is to enable great career decisions and great career journeys. So by equipping yourself with revenue management, you're going to go further. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully between your business and my business, Paul, we can help people do that.
Thank you, Mike. Look forward to it.
Fantastic, guys. So thanks for listening. Those of you who have got to the end, hopefully it's been a really interesting conversation. We've got lots more senior leaders coming up in the pod, including Steve Caruso from Red Bull, Tim York from V2 Foods, two very interesting and different businesses. We've got an HR director special with Nellie Tierney of Campari and Karen Coyle of William Grant, two of the most business-aligned, most energetic HR directors you'll meet. So that'll be a lot of fun. And as they say, many more to come. So meanwhile, if you need some help on career goal setting or if a career decision pending, then reach out to me or any of my team for insights, coaching, guides, advice, and support. So thanks again, Paul.
Thank you, Mike.
And from me, Mike Dickson, keep listening to our pod to help your future in sales and marketing.